there, folks. It's Kevin Matteson here at Dragonfly, and just wanted to welcome you to another podcast or video, depending on how you're watching or listening to this. So welcome. We're going to talk about Ecospots for biology in the age of technology, and I actually was able to get a hold of two students in the program, Alisha Singleton, who is in the AIP at Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden, and Beth Keskey, who is in the Global Field Program. Both of them took biology in the age of technology last year and are now student leaders in the course, and were willing to spend part of their Saturday morning talking about their process for making their Ecospots. As I mentioned in this in the conversation, we realize Ecospots are a bit of a task-loading endeavor in that you are learning about the content you want to talk about, then you're learning the technology of how to portray it. You're learning about use of photos and video and how to lay things out depending on what technology you're using. So we realize there's a lot to this and it can be a challenge, but we know you guys can all accomplish it. And as Beth says in the end, get at it. You can do it. It does take time, but just get at it. So if you want to jump ahead, we start talking about Beth's Ecospot at about 11 minutes, I would say. And we look at Alicia's at about 20th minute. If you want to jump ahead to those. One sort of thing I wanted to mention is that Beth's Ecospot does show some images of bushmeat, creatures caught for that and killed in the jungles of Papua New Guinea, which was the area she was investigating. So if you're sensitive to that, I just wanted to give you a heads up, but it is kind of an element of that situation there where people need to find ways to make income and make a living, and so it is a sort of a tough situation, certainly to some of our Western notions of conservation. But anyway, that said, I hope you enjoy it, and feel free. Alisha and Beth both said you can contact them if you have any questions. Some of you may have them as your student leader, but if not, either way, you can reach out. And finally, there are some other examples of Ecospots that you guys will see in the Biology in the Age of Technology workshop under the to-do entitled Ecospot Project Ideas. So the two examples we talk about here are not the only ones you can look at. All right, that's it. Enjoy and take care. All right, welcome to this podcast and video, I guess, talking about Ecospots and projects in biology in the age of technology. We have Alisha Singleton with us, who is a student leader in VAT, and we have Beth Keskey, who is also a student leader in VAT. And my name is Kevin Matteson. I work as Associate Director with Dragonfly. So it's great for us to connect via Skype. Thanks for joining on this Saturday morning. We were just talking about all the things we're balancing in our lives on Saturday mornings. So anyway, we're going to talk a little bit, but maybe Alisha, you want to share just who you are, where you are, and which program you're in and that sort of thing?
Sure. So I am located in Hamilton, Ohio. I'm part of the AIP program. So kind of my home base is the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden. I started the program in the summer of 2018, and I will graduate in December of 2021.
Cool, thanks. And Beth?
Yeah, my name's Beth Keskey. I'm a student leader, as you mentioned, for BAT. I'm part of the Global Field Program, and I am located in Minnesota currently. So I started in 2018 as well, and I plan on graduating December 2020. So, yay!
Awesome. It's coming up quicker than you might realize, I'm sure. So cool. So you know, one of the things we were just trying to reach people in different formats. It's great that in Dragonfly, people can asynchronously, you know, they can read all the posts but seeing actual people and hearing voices, we're realizing more and more whenever we can do it is really important. And especially with projects like the Ecospot, um, it's I think a challenging project to like wrap your head around, especially if you're not like super into technology. So in a little bit, I want to show both of your projects and you can walk through it, but maybe just we could start with like how you started like the process and how you came up with the ideas for your eco spots. I don't know, Alicia, you want to start with that?
Sure. Um, when actually I had a hard time figuring out exactly what I wanted to do. I think because I hadn't quite reached that point where I knew exactly what my master plan was going to be while I was in BAT. Like I had a general idea, but I didn't exactly know what direction to go into. So I kind of tried to pick a broad category that I knew I was interested in, but that would I could tie in later when I really narrowed down kind of what my master plan was. So I wanted something that could express kind of something about my local hometown. And with interest in biodiversity, I just focused on local biodiversity, which many people think of kind of hotspots and rainforests and barrier reefs. But even here in Hamilton, Ohio, we still have some kind of unique species that I think are important to conserve. So I wanted to express that, and finding kind of a platform was tricky. I kind of rolled the idea around to use Tumblr and then a couple other websites, but basically through trial and error, I ended up kind of building the website. So.
Cool. And just as a teaser, because I think it was kind of interesting on your website, the 3 endangered or rare species in Hamilton County, Ohio, which I had heard of. Let's see, one of them was a mussel, maybe? A
Yeah,
freshwater
one
mussel?
mussel.
Yep,
Yeah.
which makes sense. And then you had was another one a bat or?
Yes, one's a bat, and then the other one is a clover, I
Right.
believe. Yeah,
Which you would not think of as being endangered or rare, right? But
right, right.
it's not a typical lawn red clover or white clover, right? So
Right. Correct. Yeah, and I tried really hard to find one, and I could not, because I took a lot of my own pictures, but definitely couldn't find a picture of an endangered or threatened species put on there, which was sad, but that's kind of how it goes. That's why they're considered threatened and endangered.
right. Gotcha. Cool. All right. And yeah, Beth, what about you?
So my eco spot kind of went in a little bit of a different direction. It was definitely something that was focused in on a particular community, of course, but it wasn't my own personal community. And so one of the major things that really kicked off my eco spot, because after I got done with my TPR project, I was like, I have no idea what to do for my eco spot. Like it was very overwhelming. And I did know, so I started taking some time to reflect on what sort of work I'd done in the past, what I was going to be doing. And I had recently um, been chosen to go to the Borneo project or the Borneo EE. And I didn't really know a whole lot about Borneo. And ironically, at the same time, about when I was doing my eco spot, my boyfriend had returned from Papua New Guinea, and he had been working with some of like the natives there. They were doing some logging. It was this natural gas company, and while he was there, he had started taking some pictures of a lot of different biodiversity. And I told him, okay, I know you're going back. Take as many pictures as you possibly can, because he was showing me tons of pictures, and I had heard there was a lot of deforestation happening in Borneo. And so I decided to kind of take my audience to my future class, my future EE class. And that was one of the major kickoffs was I had just a lot of really amazing photographs that my boyfriend was sending me, and I wanted to be able to use that to tell their story. And so I'm really into storytelling, mapping, And that was kind of some of the ways that I started to knit together my Ecospot. And then once I kind of started getting my Esri map figured out, I suddenly was like, this is really cool. I'm really getting excited about this. And then I found myself kind of going further and further down the rabbit hole, wanting to figure out, well, how do I add this button? Or how should I put this on a blog? Or how can I put this in a website? And it just sort of started to start as like a little ember, and then suddenly I ended up with my project. So it was definitely overwhelming at first, but ultimately it started to kind of iron out my master plan, which has been inspired by this actual class. So I love BAT. It is one of my favorite classes that I've been able to take. And so I think this is I think they can see the.
Yep. Yeah. So since
Yeah.
you were talking about all the beautiful pictures, and I was like, I had no idea that these were not like professional photos. So yeah, your boyfriend's got some skill with a camera, I guess. But
Yeah. Yeah.
so maybe I'll just scroll down it since we're talking about it, and if you want to share anything else. So this is the platform is ArcGIS. I don't know if they can see that at the top here,
Right.
arcgis.com, and they have like a storyboard kind of setup. It's not. Can you talk
Yeah.
about like
Yeah.
how this works?
So they have different templates you can pick from. And eventually I did kind of start playing around with other templates that they had, because I really thought it was a really cool platform to use. And so I just used one of their more simple scrolling ones where you can just kind of drop in pictures. And I really liked that I could type in there and kind of make it more of a story, because I personally feel that a lot of people learn by personal story. And so that was some of the inspiration behind that. So yeah, it's definitely a great platform. I really enjoyed making this. So
Look at that
yeah.
rain there in that picture from that cloud is just incredible. And then somewhere down here, I think, oh yeah, look at that. That's great.
Yeah, this white spider is
Yeah,
just wild. I was like, what is that?
I
So
know. I saw that. And it looks huge. I don't know how big it is. It's hard to tell the scale.
right, right. It's gosh, I think it's smaller than your hand. I'll give you that.
Hmm.
They actually, while they were out in the bush, they caught this, and the guys that he was with, they actually ate that,
Wow.
which
And
is
so that's one of those hard things to judge, right? Because I think our Western mentality, we're like, oh, that's, it's bushmeat. I have no idea how common this particular type of looks like a monitor lizard is. So I don't necessarily want to judge that
right,
practice if it's a part of the sort of indigenous culture and if it's not a rare species. But yeah, that's those kind of experiences are always challenging to navigate, I guess, a little bit.
right. So the local group there, they they live out in the jungle, and this company hires them out, and so they all they speak a like pidgin. And so they will live off the land. So when they were kind of chopping through the jungle, um, he would just they would catch things and they would eat them, because they were like living off the land while they were
Sure.
out there. The company did provide this meat, but it was all packaged and it wasn't very good. Um, and so that was one of the things that they did. And so there's kind of a picture of Papua New Guinea, and in the Esri maps.
Okay. And what is diwa? What is that?
So that is uh, that's tree, or if I can remember correctly, um, yeah, tree. And so whenever they would go out into the jungle, they would kind of do this type of logging where they would cut down little sections of the forest, and then as the trees were falling, these men would yell that. And so the kind of the whole message there is it's a really complicated topic actually when you really get into it, because you have deforestation happening in Borneo, and it's putting a lot of their species at risk. And then on the other hand, in PNG, which has also got a ton of wildlife. It's a lot different than Borneo, mostly because they don't have the river systems that Borneo has. And so logging is not as easy in Papua New Guinea.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just kind of a site there. And, one of the things I wanted to kind of impress with this is you've got this amazing forest. There's companies going in there. They are, looking for natural gas and things like that. And while it's not in the same situation as Borneo, it definitely could become similar. While it does have a different geology, it's just something to kind of like keep in, our radar. We have these hot spots around the planet that, we go into and we learn about, but I mean, it's happening everywhere. And so these are just some pictures of the camps that they would put up. And these men would literally make these camps out of nothing, and then they would. This is a poisonous snake, actually, that they encountered on it, and so it really is quite amazing. And these men, they work for, gosh, hours and hours and hours, like long, like all day. They just work in the heat. And so, yeah, it was definitely a unique experience that my boyfriend was there. He was the paramedic on site that was required by the company. And so he would literally go out with these men and they would sleep in these tents. And he said the nets were too small, and so the bugs would get in.
Mm-hmm.
And he said there were some miserable nights that he spent there, but it was pretty incredible, I think. And so it was just something I really wanted to capture, this story of kind of what's going on there, kind of more about what's going on with the men there, especially as I was heading out into Borneo, which is near there and very different, but in a lot of ways similar. So.
Right. Yeah. It's like the content of what you're talking about and the message. And then there's the actual, like, how you put this all together with the photographs. And I like the way you start with these great photographs, and then you kind of move in and you go into culture and you go into the maps and the conservation elements. And then also those very difficult things of these species, again, the Western sensibilities of, like, killing a venomous snake. Well, that's a pretty dangerous thing for the folks out there, and kind of seeing it from their point of view, which I think in conservation it's often not really looking at from the standpoint of the people working in these industries. It's more just that's bad.
Right.
I feel like you're kind of giving a voice to the people that, for various economic, social reasons, they have to work in these settings, and telling that story. And then you have your citations, which is great. Makes graduate school in Miami very happy to have all that too.
Right. I will say one thing with this final project that I had was I was lucky to have photos given to
Mm-hmm.
me by someone who was like, "Yeah, you can use these. You've got permission." And so I listed his name on the bottom. There is definitely a lot of issues that I did have when I was doing my TPR and the whole photos thing. So I would definitely say that was one of the challenges I had when I was going through and trying to figure out how to make the proper annotations to photos.
Right.
I was lucky enough in this scenario, but yeah, that was a challenge, kind of learning kind of how to navigate that when I was going through my TPR. So just maybe to remember that when you're doing an
Yeah,
Ecospots.
I know there's, if someone's listening to this and is like, "Oh, that's great. She had, her boyfriend had all these amazing pictures and it made it,
Right.
somehow."
Right.
But yeah, the point is, I think everyone has maybe some connection with their family or friends or someone that maybe has a tie-in that you can connect with. So it's not just like you're on your own, or, there are the stock photos, there are the Creative Commons photos. There are places you can find these things. But also just thinking outside of the box of people, maybe even doing like an oral history, who knows, of how your grandparents or your mom and dad or other family people or elders have felt about different natural resource issues, and maybe trying to document all that. So I kind of like that it's connected with your boyfriend and that there's, you know, it kind of became this project that you were able to build off his experiences, and obviously it was a perfect precursor for you traveling to Borneo, I would think. So very cool. All right, well, let's jump to closer to home for most people that are, and jump over. Alicia, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
All right, cool.
And my
Um,
pictures are definitely not as pretty and as awesome. Um, but I kind of had the same scenario. I looked through Creative Commons and looked for pictures that I could use, and I really just couldn't find that many that I liked. So I ended up going out and taking my own pictures, which was a whole nother, like another technological kind of step that I had to take because I didn't have a fancy camera. I took all the pictures on my phone and then transferring those to the computer and editing those and all of that was kind of another aspect, I feel like, of technology that I learned on top of how to build a website. So everything kind of piled together and you learned more and more as you go.
Yeah, and I should jump in and just say, you know, you don't have to have awesome pictures for your eco spot. Like, it's great if you do, and that's a part of your storytelling because we do know people respond to that. But if you want to do just something with audio or just something with text or just something with, you know, there's a lot of different ways you guys can do this. But in this case, yeah, well, these are great pictures that you pulled together for the site. And then you have some cool, so your focus, it looks like it's on
Yeah,
Weebly.com. So that's just a free, right, web hosting and web
right.
site maker.
Yeah. There's also Wix.com, which I
Mhm.
tried. But I felt like Weebly was just a little bit more user friendly for me. I'd never made a website before, so I leaned towards that one. But there are several free options out there.
Cool. And then I like these source, courtesy of the author here for your picture of a butterfly, and you have a picture of a toad or something or a frog here on the right. So you did go out and get not only the landscape photos but some wildlife photos, and sort of looks like your focus is on biodiversity in Hamilton County, right? So do you
Yeah,
want to talk about how you came to that and what you were hoping to achieve with the website in general?
sure, sure. So, kind of leaning back to my master plan was very open in general. So I didn't know what direction to go into, but I wanted something kind of close to home and something local. And I decided that I really don't know a lot about what kind of offerings that we have in Hamilton, which is Butler County. I grew up in Oxford, which is also Butler County, so I was a little more familiar with that. But again, I didn't really know what endangered species do we have, if any. Are there any that are at risk? Kind of what's right around the corner from me. So I wanted to explore that and find out what kind of green space and natural spaces that we had. So I went to different websites and looked at all the parks that were available. Um, Found out a little bit more again about that lovely clover that I could not find a picture of, right? That's endangered. And a couple other species. There's also a rattlesnake species that's at risk and threatened as well. But I really just wanted something that my audience, I guess I could say, was more just the general public and maybe people with families who are trying to be a little bit greener and learn a little bit more about conservation, and maybe teach their children a little bit more about what's kind of right in your own backyard and what do we have right here. Because we always think about those lovely hotspots and Papua New Guinea and Borneo and different rainforests and other areas as well, but we still have a lot to do right here at home. My original plan was just to have a blog that was kind of family focused, and had activities that you could do with your kids or different offerings that were happening throughout the county that you could become involved in and attend. But that kind of spiraled into an entire website with lots of information, and hopefully it will at least get people to click on some of the links and learn a little bit more about conservation and become a little bit more environmentally friendly. So yeah, that's kind of
Cool.
how I ended up there and how it evolved. Of course, looking back at it, I guess almost a year later, I still see areas that I want to fix and that I want to kind of tweak, or little typos here and there as well. So I think it's the nice thing about the Ecospot is I feel like it's a project that I can keep using. So it's not like I spent all this time making it for the program and I can't use it for anything else. I can potentially add that into my master plan or be able to use that for another purpose.
Right. Yeah, no, it's hard to realize how much time it takes just to organize these websites and get all these pictures, all these videos you got, get the formatting right. I mean, it really, it's an artistic endeavor, it's a scientific endeavor, it's a writing endeavor. It's like a lot of different skills you're using to get this all to work right. And you load in, a picture and it like doesn't fit or it looks grainy and whatever. And so anyway, it's really impressive. Have you linked this anywhere on do you know traffic levels? Because I mean, I think it's a great experience to do these things, but then it's like, does the website or the creation just kind of become another small drop in the internet that's not really getting viewed much,
Right. Yeah, on Weebly, they do have tracking mechanisms. So you can go back and you can see how much traffic you've had. You can see what links have been used. I have not had any traffic on mine, but until you really get the traffic, it doesn't show up in kind of a Google search. So right now you can search biodiversity in Butler County, Ohio, and the website will not pop up for you, just because, I don't have other people that are really visiting that. Eventually, I think the goal would be if I can continue to build on it and find a really good audience, to have it linked through maybe a park website or another organization's website somewhere throughout the county. And then that would build kind of an audience and I could continue with the blog. And that's
Yeah.
that's the ultimate goal. But
Right. Well, I
obviously
think
there's
most,
stuff that happens too.
yeah, I mean, most academic training and like graduate school stuff, like you're kind of just creating things. Well, this is the traditional philosophy, is like you're creating for practice and that's it. I think some people can create these things and based on their career, they might actually be able to like extend an existing website or build a product that is going to be utilized right away. And other people are in a position of like, you know what, I just want to try all this out and see if I can do it well. And then it becomes a skill on your resume or that you can extend further. So I forget, Alicia, what kind of work do you do? Has this connected with your work at all?
No,
Okay.
I'm a I'm a laboratory manager at a histopathology lab. So I basically work with tissues all day, and do a lot of management kind of things. We are kind of using a lot of new technology there. And our company just went through a merger, so we have a new website that we're utilizing, and we're working on connection tools, because now instead of being a company in one location, we're actually in 8. So some of the things that I think I've used through school, maybe not just in BAT, but just as being a grad student, I'm able to use in order to connect to other people. So that's been kind of nice. And I have helped a little bit on our website, which I think my website using Weebly was much easier than what the platform that we have at work. But I did get to kind of use a little bit of those skills. I think it's nice to have that kind of under my belt, though. I'm probably not the traditional age of most grad students either, so I felt a little bit behind the technological times coming into school, and I feel like I've been able to catch up, and BAT was one of those classes that really kind of forced my hand, but at the same time was a great experience in order to catch up on a lot of different things that are out there.
Cool. Yeah, and Beth, you can see I dropped out of our sharing the screens, I think. So we're back sort of just in loose conversation mode, and maybe we can start to, have some additional thoughts or closing thoughts or anything that you're thinking about. But Beth, I mean, I'm just curious, like, did your website or your ArcGIS, I guess it is a website, product, did that tie in anything to your work as a teacher or sharing any of this stuff or?
Yeah, so I definitely shared this with my students for sure, and they were fascinated. They were like, "Wow," and especially since I had like a personal connection to the photographer and could kind of share that story, and it was a really good way to actually start kind of talking about issues that are happening in the world, climate change, etc. Um, I did eventually take this Esri map and I did put it into a blog. And then I think I used Blogger. And that was kind of the way that I got some of the analytics on it. And then from there, I actually I embedded that blog into my website. I was making the Google Sites that I started in the very beginning. And so it's kind of cool to see how it's all sort of fitting together. One thing I also wanted to mention that I really liked about um, the other Ecospot here is sometimes we kind of get into this, we need to change the world kind of mentality. And the one thing I really like about that other Ecospot is the fact that it really does focus in on a personal community, right? So mine was definitely looking, like to the other side of the planet and what's going on the other side of the world. But I think there is something to be said about really focusing in on your own community and trying to figure out ways that you can kind of engage those around you, because I mean that's really powerful. But as far as using mine in education, it's really been useful for, like I said, starting those conversations and being able to talk about when you graduate, especially to my students, like what are some of the things that you're passionate about, what do you want to do with yourself, and how do you want to live your life, and so it's really kind of helped in that aspect. So yeah, just some of those thoughts.
Yeah, we didn't plan this to have sort of like a local Ohio kind of project, with Alicia's and Beth yours being global and one, AIP and GFP and teacher and more in a tech science lab kind of field. But it just worked out that way, which is kind of cool to see the different things that different directions folks can go with this assignment.
Right. And I would definitely say I was not, even though I have a lot of, exposure to technology as an educator, I wouldn't say coming into this BAT course that I was by any means, proficient at any of it. It really took me like focusing in and just kind of following the idea that I had. And that's ultimately what's going to create the Ecospot. So I think a lot of students feel that way. I think there's some insecurity there, and just go for it is really my advice.
Yeah, you have to try out different things to figure out how things work. And I think that probably took me more time to really decide what platform I wanted to use and how can it even do what I want it to do. And if it can't, what other platform can I use? So really trial and error and just looking at what's out there and what's available. It's not like I sat down and said, okay, I'm going to do my Ecospot. Here's my topic. I'm going to use a website and it's going to look like this. That never happened. It was kind of an evolution, right? Like, oh, I think I might do a blog. How do I even do that? What options do I have to make one? And then that evolved into this massive website. But also, citations take a long time. Finding the right words and how to fit everything in takes a long time. So it's definitely time consuming. So don't wait. I encourage the students to start early. But you start with a small idea, and if it gets bigger, that's great. Otherwise, if it doesn't, you're probably still going to have something great to share.
Cool. Yeah, no, I think it can be frustrating when you like go into one website creation or one platform and you start to do it and you're like, this doesn't work. And you're like, oh, those couple hours gone or whatever. So I do think sharing ideas, maybe if you already do feel comfortable with certain like you've maybe started a YouTube channel in the past and you never did much with it. So maybe extending on some things you've been learning is a good way. And then also like this is 100% task loading that we've done here with this project in educational circles. You know, you're learning the technology, you're learning the content, you're learning the outreach methods, the photography, all the elements that might be going into your project. Or if you're doing like interviews, like how to manage an interview, right? So we recognize that it's not always explicitly said, but this is challenging for sure. So, thanks for doing your best, I guess, is what I would say for folks. Um, okay, well, I think maybe we'll leave it at that unless either of you have anything else you want to throw in there.
I guess I mean, I would just say, just get after it. It's going to be great.
Cool. Okay. Well, thanks again to both of you for spending a little of your Saturday morning together talking about this in this kind of new format. And for anyone that's listening and watching down the line, we're thanks for joining in. You can always email me if you have thoughts at matteskc@miamioh. It's matteskc@miamioh.edu. Because we are just trialing this stuff out. So if you find it useful or you have suggestions, let us know. And then I think that's it. So thanks again to both of you. Have a great day and take care, folks.